Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. CAVIL'S, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. CAVIL'S with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Mike Washington out on assignment. He's actually in the traffic in Philadelphia where it's cold out there. And for me, I'm like Charles here in Houston where we're getting snow. I'm hearing this snow in Atlanta where our producer's at. And AD Drew is fighting snow. We're going to have him join us a little bit too. But so I'm going to say welcome to the frigid lab. It's kind of cold out here if you would understand what I'm saying there for all those listening. Come on in the lab for all those out there joining us today and warm up with us as we're going to bring you the update this week for episode 615, information on your HBCU Sports Lab information. Welcome to episode 615 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU for all things HBCU sports, institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta, along with my co-host, Mike Washington. As I said, he's out, and Charles Bishop. We're here with AD Drew, who's still excited as he flew back in early this morning, where he threw the knockout punch against Howard University Morehouse. I'm still asking him, did he actually get his invitation in the handshake line? That's twice. You know, last week and this weekend, or Monday, I should say, MLK holiday. Morehouse got it done. 2 D2 programs, one out of CIAA, one out of the SIAC, defeated Howard, who happens to be 4-0 in the MEAC. The MEAC itself is 5-1 against the SWAC. 7-3, I believe it is. 7-2, it is against all Division I HBC programs. But Howard happened to fall to 0-2 against Division II programs. That's wild when you think about the circular framework of what's going on there. With that being said, Charles, as I tell everybody, welcome to the show. I want to say, how did your interview go? My understanding, you had a chance to have the interview with two young podcasters, streamers, I guess. With Deuce, my son, and Ryan, who used to be part of the founding group of this, his son, Miles, on the HBCU Sports Network, as they do shows on Saturday and Sunday, is my understanding, at 4:30 and 5:30 with updates on both days. So I want to give them a shout out. But I got the interview first to talk about the women, and then you got the interview second to talk about the men. How do you feel your interview went?
I thought the interview went well, and I have to take my hat off to Miles and Deuce because they are two very astute young men. And it's so funny. They remind me so much of myself at that age. You know, I was very in tune to what was going on with Jackson State athletics as a child. So it was always a pleasure for me to go to the barbershop and share that knowledge when my barbers would start asking me about statistics around the SWAC. So I see a lot of myself in Deuce and Miles, and I really appreciate them inviting me onto the show to kind of talk a little bit about the men's ball game. But those two guys are up and coming, and it's very unique. They have a different perspective at their age with regards to HBCU sports.
They do.
Yeah.
Well said. And shout out to Miles as he did the choreographer. Make sure we waited at the door until he gave the signal. We came in and sat out, and he goes through the interview. Both of them have great questions to ask. So
yeah, we got to get a clip of them on the show.
Yeah, that's why I find out we're gonna have it probably near the end as we get to the basketball tournament, so they can just kind of do a wrap up. We'll find a way to get them on the show and share, if not earlier. It depends on how it goes. As young men, obviously school is first, so we got to figure out how to fit that into the schedule and line them up. But they're having a brilliant time. With that being said, AD Drew, how are you doing today?
You know how I'm doing today. You know, my biggest fear was not being able to get home today before the weather hit the Atlanta region.
Right.
Once I got that, I got back to that high. You know, it did not blow my high. The weather. I was just waiting on the weather to blow my high, but it did not blow my high from yesterday. But before I talk about yesterday, Dr. Kabir, I want to applaud you as a father for planting that seed with your son, and then actually having the means to allow and to support him to do it, because you know, as fathers, a lot of times you see something in your child, but you may not be financially able, or your time may not allow you to nurture a child into something that he may have interest in. And this may only last for a couple of months before he moves on to the next thing.
Right.
This may be the thing that he does. So I want to applaud you as a father for just supporting your child's dreams. You know, I supported my son's dreams. Sometimes I had to kick him into to challenge him to do certain things of the talent that I saw in him. So shout out to you and your wife for just supporting your son at such a young age, pursuing something that may wind up being lucrative for him one day.
I appreciate that, and shout out to Faith, my wife. As you said, she's certainly supportive. We use it as the opportunity growing and learning. Obviously, a really good student, but now it reinforces his math skills. So we do the differential of game scores, percentages, and things of that nature. So it's a way to do that. As we, also have him write, so he can write about a paragraph of what he wants to talk about during the show. So it's another way to increase his activity in writing. So it's a fun way, I guess you would say, allow him to do some of the things we want to do to continue to do the academic lessons and rigors of the day. But I appreciate the acknowledgement. But all credit goes to Deuce and Miles on the HBCU Sports Network. One last shout out for them. Again, they do the show on 4:30, 5:30 on Saturdays and Sundays. So if you don't mind, go ahead and check out the show. If nothing else, give them a like and subscribe. They get excited when they see their numbers, and they are increasing. So it's hilarious to see the efforts and the attitudes they put into it. I'll go back to you.
What size do they wear? Because I want to make sure that they have some Morehouse gear to wear on an episode. Man. So I need you to send me that come on now,
Brandon, I like the way this SID thinks.
Market 101.
You can get them small, kids small.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely a hand. I'm gonna have to find something in the closet in Deuce's size to make sure that he becomes Morehouse brand aware. As we already know, he is definitely SWAC aware. I need to introduce him to the SIAC. But let's talk about that game last night. No, I'm just like
that's smart. Let me give one final shout out. Now I'm coming back to you for the game, and then Charles can give some updates as well. Charles has done a really good job of branding, and he did it really smoothly. First it was the bands. He was doing the band things, really into the bands. And all of a sudden I heard him talking about the sonic boom and all that. I was like, I don't see that much because he watched YouTube bands. And so I was like, where is this coming from? All of a sudden I see a shirt and a little something. I said, oh, his Uncle Alpha Charles got him. Wendy, shout out to Wendy. Showing him much love. So he's really supported by friends of mine, certainly the Alphas in Life, media folks, and so it's a good thing. Taking pictures for him so he can put up the pictures. I got to get a call to the commissioner, and I told A.D. Granger they were doing the show the other day with the game going on, and they were going to broadcast the game. I was like, not so fast. We don't own those rights. So there's some learning things as well, but they on top of it. With that being said, let me go back to you, 80 Drew, to give me an update and how you felt in terms of that. I started watching the second half of the game, so it was close. You inside our Graham and all of our messenger talk, you provided the updates, which made sure I clicked it on. I was like, oh, this might get interesting. And they got a couple of big stops late, some big buckets, and before you knew it, it was time was 0, and they went away with the win.
Yeah, I was so giddy about that game. We obviously it was cold as we went into Atlanta, and I mean into DC. And the thing that was interesting about it, we dropped a contest on Saturday to Edward Waters. Now first place Edward Waters. I think first place, but a game that we felt that we should have won, but we do what happened to us while we lost that particular game. So going into shooting around on Sunday, Coach made his adjustments, ran back with the same starting lineup, and boy, you talking about coming out hot in that particular game. I mean, Morehouse had as much as a 17-point lead in the first half, and that's when I text you guys, was like, I hope y'all watching this because had to shoot this way. Jaden Gray, number 5 for Morehouse, had a career high 22 points. Sincere Key is a 3-point specialist for us. Not quite the range of Steph Curry, but he definitely has the fear of a Steph Curry. He don't care where he shoots that thing from. He has confidence that thing's going to fall in the basket, and gets upset when it doesn't fall in the basket. And that's what you want to see in the shooter. Not I hope it's going to go in. I get mad when it's not going to go in because I know it's a good shot. Matter of fact, a stat, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but for number 3, Sincere Key, 88% of his field goal attempts come from behind the arc.
Oh wow!
So when you see him on the court, you know why he's in the starting lineup.
There's a scout report.
I like that.
Yeah,
it's not like they hadn't learned that if they didn't doing their job. So
exactly,
the way he should just get it done.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, a great atmosphere at the Bird capacity crowd, largest crowd that they've had this season, over 2,600 people there. That's what you call a fire marshal crowd. One of those crowds where the fire marshal has to come and lock the door to the facility. Standing room only, great atmosphere. They had a presentation there. If you remember the young Olympic athlete, the high school, I think he was a 400-meter runner. Yeah. They actually had him there in attendance doing one of the timeouts and presented him with an award. He's 16 years old, U.S. Olympian medalist, and obviously the Howard's probably trying to recruit him for their track program, but we got one on the D2 level. Not gonna get quite the NIL that you're gonna get for some of those other places, but you can't beat that Morehouse experience. And the Morehouse relays second to none, seen right here on the Black College Sports Network. So just gotta throw that out. But if you haven't gone back and watched the game, you can go back and watch it on ESPN Plus. You can go to my Twitter, BCSN Drew, and you can see the final attempt by Howard when they came up a day late and $1 short on that 3-point attempt to tie and send the game to overtime.
Great job. We're going to send Morehouse a check. That was nice.
I know.
I'm not bad, but good job. Charles, what type of updates you want to get?
Well, let's start off with this, and on a sad note, unfortunately, but FAMU legend Sammy Knight, he passed away. Sammy Knight led Florida A&M football to one of their most memorable wins in school history, the big upset over the University of Miami. He passed away. Knight was a Tallahassee native, was the backup quarterback on the Rattlers' 1978 Division I AA National Championship team. And, of course, in his junior year of 1979, he led FAMU to a 16-13 upset of the University of Miami Hurricanes. That game was played, of course, at Doak Campbell Stadium on Florida State's campus. So, want to send condolences to Florida A&M family in regards to the passing of Sammy Knight.
Very appropriate. You know, on the show, we like to acknowledge those HBCU individuals, particular players that have done so much to create the sporting diaspora, as I like to call it, for HBCU sports. When they become ancestors, we like to honor them with a moment of silence. So let's do that now. Last thing we'll do before we take our first break, since there will not be an Indy report tomorrow or next Wednesday, everybody is on assignment there, particularly Dave that does the production for the show. I do want to give a shout out yesterday. Hampton and North Carolina A&T played their second basketball game. This one was in home for the Aggies, but Hampton got it done. They were playing them pretty well and getting them to them. And then late in the game, Aggies made a push at home. Really good. And so wanted to make sure we acknowledge that for that. Last one I want to do, since we're paying homage, I also wanted to give homage to Fred Newhouse, Prairie A&M University Olympian, Hall of Famer at multiple levels. Sad news to hear that he passed away as well. So I wanted to recognize him also with the moment of silence before we go into our first break. With that, let's go into our first break. We'll come back on the other side and we'll do the top 5 major division women reports. And we have the update and let you know what's going around the Division 1 area of the major division for women's. And then in the third segment, we'll give you the update for the men. With that being said, let's take our first break and see you on the other side.
Morehouse College and Tuskegee University men's basketball teams were selected to compete in the 2025 NBA HBCU Classic presented by AT&T. The 4th annual NBA HBCU Classic will be played in the Bay Area as part of NBA All-Star 2025 and will once again celebrate the rich traditions, on-court athleticism, and commitment to excellence of the HBCU community. For tickets, visit nba.com/all-star.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Levert Experience and the Bar Cave. Immerse yourself in interactive art. Shop from over 80 vendors. Take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app. And enjoy family-friendly STEM activities. Plus, don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends, honoring talents such as Whitney Houston, Marvin Gaye, and Luther Vandross. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Sonia from She Say Sports. Make sure to check us out every Friday morning at 9 a.m. on Black College Sports Network, YouTube, and Linktree. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page.
Morehouse College and Tuskegee University men's basketball teams were selected to compete in the 2025 NBA HBCU Classic presented by AT&T. The 4th annual NBA HBCU Classic will be played in the Bay Area as part of NBA All-Star 2025 and will once again celebrate the rich traditions, on-court athleticism, and commitment to excellence of the HBCU community. For tickets, visit nba.com/all-star.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Vills inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into it. This is week number 3 that I've started doing and bringing back up the poll rankings for basketball. We're going to start with the women because for us, chivalry is not dead. With that being said, let's start with those teams dropping out. In fact, there weren't any this week in week 3. No teams dropped out, but we do have some receiving votes. The next 5, if you would, that's Alabama A&M Bulldogs that sit at 4-1, just outside of the top 5. Along them, also at 4-1, is the Southern Jaguars. Yeah, the Florida A&M Rattlers that have bounced back, and they're now 3-2 outside of the poll rankings, along with Bethune-Cookman Wildcats 3-2 as well. FAMU got that early win against Bethune-Cookman, which seems to maybe give them a little edge in the poll ranking. With that being said, North Carolina Central Eagles is the lone team outside of those SWAC 4 teams right there. Central is 2-2, winning 2 straight games, so they're receiving votes outside of the top 5. But let's see who's getting it done in the top 5. Starting with number 5, we have none other than Jackson State Tigers sitting at 4-1. They have 51 points for previously ranked 4. They dropped a ranking. A lot of that was because they had a really great matchup this past Thursday. We got to catch that in the gym as we did the show, and it was against Texas Southern Tigers that defeated them, that stays undefeated. But at number 4, we have the Howard Bison. The Howard Bison, 3-0. They dropped some, even though they hadn't lost the game. They didn't play this weekend as they were open. 54 points, but they stay. They dropped 2 spots to number 4. Bringing us to number 3, we talked about Texas Southern Tigers defeating Jackson State. Well, they remain undefeated in conference play. They earn now not just jumping up 2 spots to number 3. They earn a first place vote as they have 62 points. Bringing us to number 2. Number 2 on the list is North Carolina A&T Aggies. Started off relatively slow in conference play, but in non-conference play, I should say. But in conference play, they are getting it done. They are also undefeated at 6-0. 2 first-place votes with 76 points. They move up a spot in week number 3. Bringing us to number 1, the Norfolk State Spartans. They continue to win, and they get it done. 4-0 on the season, 5 first-place votes. So they lost a couple of first-place votes, but still are getting it done. Although they hadn't lost, they didn't play this weekend really in terms of conference play. 77 points. But they remain at number 1. So that'll do it in week number 3 for the women. Let me go to you, Charles. What are your thoughts in terms of week number 3, top 5 on the women's side for the major division?
Yeah, I think the first thing that jumps out, we got a huge matchup this upcoming weekend with Norfolk State and Howard. So looking forward to that matchup this upcoming week.
Top 5 matchup.
Yeah, top 5 matchup when you take a look at that. Texas Southern Tigers, I think they have been the surprise of the SWAC. They have turned heads. When I talked to Coach Nate Kilbert from Alcorn, he was saying that this team definitely is going to cause problems because they're long, athletic, and they can shoot the ball. Cortland Loudermill is one of the better shooters in the SWAC, and she came out on fire against Alcorn. Big win over Jackson State this past week. And then they flipped around on this past Saturday and had another big win over Alcorn. But they get a true test on the road this upcoming weekend. They go to Alabama A&M, go to Alabama State. So they will do their Alabama swing. So first real opportunity where they've had where they've been on the road. I think one of their games was canceled when they were supposed to play UAPB. So they only had 1 road game thus far.
Good point. And particular Alabama A&M is playing really well.
Playing really good ball.
Tough place to play. Obviously,
Exactly.
they moved to the new arena, but they're made that toughness in terms of transferring it over to the new arena. They played really well there. New coach is getting it done. Saw the updates where Coach Prime got to come in and see his daughter and talk to the team, and they seemed a little bit invigorated and got it done there. So that was a nice update to see that taking place. With that being said, let me go to you, A.D. Drew. What are your thoughts on the top 5 major division in week number 3?
All right, Charles, you can't answer this question, but if you thought Jackson State's women would still be in the top 5, raise your hand. Oh, well, then go ahead and answer, Charles. I mean, let's be. And I don't know what's the biggest surprise out of the top 5. The fact that Jackson State is still in the top 5 despite all of the turnover that they had, or that Texas Southern has come out of nowhere to claim a spot in the top 5. You know, it's tit-tat, and Texas Southern actually beating Jackson State, although this is not Coach Reed's Jackson State team that they beat. It's the fact that you beat Jackson State, the aura of Jackson State, the fact that you went up against that blue and white, and you beat them. You know, it's something about seeing those colors, seeing that logo that's intimidating for other women in women's basketball, no matter who the head coach is, no matter who's on the court. And the school where you work at, Dr. Field, took care of their business. A&T, no surprise that A&T is hanging there. And they do have before the matchup Saturday, they do have a legit argument where they could possibly be number one against Norfolk.
Mm-hmm.
Norfolk lose, definitely that's your number one team next week, assuming that A&T takes care of business. No questions asked. But even with that, they will have a legitimate argument at that number one spot. Go ahead.
I did want to ask this question in terms of especially taking a look at North Carolina A&T. What has been the difference? Why has North Carolina A&T seemingly ascended in the CAA and Hampton is like really, really continuing to struggle?
Well, one is you had a change in the coach, David Six, that had all that success with Hampton in the MEAC. He was kind of declining. I don't know what changed in terms of his inability to recruit, because even his last year or so in the MEAC, you've seen a slight dip. And then when he went over to the Colonial, then Coastal now, you saw almost a bottom fall out. Now they have a new coach, so you have that one thing where you just have a new coach trying to figure out what they want to do. But on the A&T side, it was the opposite. You had a team that was ascending. As they left the MEAC, they were rising up. They were not one of the contenders in there, but you could see the increase in terms of wins, recruiting, and comfortability under a coach who held on and came over. And he took all that momentum that he had and was able to increase the level of recruiting, the support. And then I think the young ladies really got and bought into what he was trying to do. And he's been able to be effective even more so in the Coastal Athletic Association. So I think that's part of it, just the coaching part of it. And then, Drew, you want to add?
No, I just actually want to ask a question. Do you think the pit stop in the Big South for both of these teams may have affected them one way or the other? Obviously, vaulting A&T to what they've done in the Coastal, and may have potentially hurt Hampton as they made their ultimate ascent over to the Coastal. You know,
I think so. I think that was part of that explanation. Still, the decline and incline. Both of them just had the pit stop. Hampton left a year early, so they had 2 years basically in the Big South before they transferred over, if you would, using that pun on the word in terms of transfer of coaches and players, particularly what everybody's looking at. But I think that was part of it, just the consistency, the support. I think A&T on the women's side, particularly in some of their non-revenue sports, were a little more ready than A&T. You also had the changes in athletic directorship. We often forget oftentimes about how important the athletic directorship is in hiring, but more importantly, in terms of transition. So you had the same athletic director at A&T versus different athletic directors at Hampton. So I think that was part of it well. So essentially what you can talk about, a lot of changes for Hampton, not so many changes for A&T, particularly for women's basketball. Baseball, you've seen that a little bit. You had the changes in track, so you see how that has been a little more challenging. And then you had the changes, obviously, in football, and we certainly know how that is impacted. You had the changes in men's basketball. So, again, the consistency, whether it's Hampton or A&T, you can see how it's relevant. Last thing before we end this segment and go to the men, I did want to give a shout-out to Liv and let you know that my poll is doing its thing. We have all of the top 5 programs. She has a different order slightly. She has Jackson State at 5, which I do. But she has Texas Southern at 4 instead of 3. She has Howard at 3, if you would, instead of 4. Has A&T at 2 and Norfolk State at 1. So we agree on 3 of the 5 in terms of the same positioning and all 5 in the top 5. So a shout out to Liv that's doing it, and she does it at the beginning of the season. So I want to continue to give her credit in terms of what she's getting done. She also, you can follow her. She does a top HBCU women performance based on the updates, and Charles provided some acknowledgement of some of those women during his breakdown. With that being said, let's get into our second break. We'll come back on the other side, and we'll give you the top 5 for the men. See what these two gentlemen think about week number 3 in the major division for men's basketball. With that, we'll be right back after this second break.
Greetings, Santos. My name is Roland Austin, and I'm one of the directors at the 1876 Athletic Foundation. The 1876 Athletic Foundation was formed to promote the success of all 343 student athletes. Our overall goal is to fund scholarships for all of our student athletes. We ask that you help us in achieving this goal by donating to the 1876 Athletic Foundation via the QR code below or 1876.foundation. Your generous donation will help us continue to assist the needs of all of our Panther athletes. Thanks, and go Panthers.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta CAVIL of Dr. CAVIL'S Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. CAVIL'S Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Levert Experience and the Bar Cave. Immerse yourself in interactive art. Shop from over 80 vendors. Take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app. And enjoy family-friendly STEM activities. Plus, don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends, honoring talents such as Whitney Houston, Marvin Gaye, and Luther Vandross. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and AD Drew. The professors are in the building, warm, unlike what is outside. Everybody be safe as we continue to be under frigid conditions. Certainly for those that do not have the comfort of heat inside the home, it's really some dangerous weather. So let's take that in mind. With that being said, let's get into the top 5 major division for the men in week number 3 of the poll rankings. With that being said, we did have a team dropping out this week, Hampton Pirates. Although they got the win, they had a couple of losses earlier in the week, so they dropped to 3-4 and drop out of the poll ranking. Those receiving votes, let's look at the next 5. We have Bethune-Cookman Wildcats that got a couple of big wins as they improved to 4-1, 41 points. South Carolina State Bulldogs, 3-1, 39 points. They did play each other. There was a head-to-head matchup between Bethune-Cookman Wildcats and South Carolina State Bulldogs in the non-conference play, and the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats got it done. With that being said, you also had Alcorn State Braves, who split on the road this week as they took the Texas 2 steps. They got one of them. That was against the Panthers on Monday as they had an earlier game so they could get back home safely. But they improved to 3-2 with the road trip. Alabama State Hornets also 3-2, got a big win for themselves as they have 27 points. Morgan State Bears 2-2. They were off this week, but they found a way to stay in the top 5. So you see Hampton will fall all the way out of the top 10 with the rough week they had, but they did get the win on Martin Luther King Day against A&T on the road. With that being said, let's get into the top 5 to see those superlatives and who is the new team in the top 5. At number 5, you have Howard Bison, 3-0, 64 points. They do stay in the top 5, even though they had 2 tough losses. It was not in conference play. I think the weight of what they did in non-conference play has them still in the top 5. But I want to see what the guys think about that. Might be some challenges there. But at number 4, we have Jackson State Tigers. They split on their Texas road trip as well. They go on 4-1. They get the win at Prairie View. So Prairie View was in the mix in the top 10, but they fall out of that as they take 2 tough losses at home. The Tigers improve, however, to 4-1. They have a tough loss, back and forth contest at Texas Southern Tigers, but as many teams go in there, it's a tough place to win, particularly going down the stretch, and they can't hold it down. They have 71 points, but they stay at number 4. Bringing us to number 3, the team that jumps into the poll rankings, none other than the Texas Southern Tigers, 4-1. They actually earned 2 votes as they jump in the top 5, not ranked last week, with 86 points, bringing us to number 2. Norfolk State Spartans are rolling. They're 4-0, 5 first-place votes, 77 points, as they actually dropped this week. I should say remain there at number 1. They move up a spot from previously number 3, but Norfolk State seems to do what they always do, and that is just win. But we have number 1 ranking this week remains the Southern Jaguars as they are 5-0. They have 7 first-place votes, 105 points, but they remain number 1 as they continue to win themselves after a solid non-conference conference going on. They have won and continue to get it done. They had a big matchup to start things off in the road. They got Texas Southern, so they got a win over a top 5 program right now. That matchup looming against Jackson State should be fun in a couple of weeks. So we know that when those two tangle, it's always interesting. They got a big win over Grambling. No matter how Grambling is playing, that's a tough one. It got so tough in that matchup. It was going down the stretch. It was actually tied at the end of the game. A whistle called basically on the last play that sent time was elapsing. Sent Southern to the line. All they had to do was hit 1. Well, coach didn't like the call, obviously, and got a couple of texts, so spread out the lead a little bit. But with that being said, Southern Jaguars get it done. Joking on messengers with Carlos as he wanted to make sure everybody knew that he was proud of his men's basketball program for getting the win against Grambling. Some folks acknowledge that, yeah, they're good, but going into Baton Rouge is tough. Calls just don't go your way. But I guess
weird.
It's weird. You're a good team, huh?
It's weird how that happens.
It's actually weird. With that being said, I'm going to go to you, Charles, just to give us a little more on the top 5 or some insight on just how tough it is to win on the bluff. What are your thoughts? Top 5?
It's very tough to win on the bluff, I tell you what. But that is a very good team. Very impressive win over Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman has the second leading scorer in the SWAC. They did a tremendous job of holding Trey Thomas to only 8 points in that win over Bethune-Cookman. So kudos to Southern. They're getting it done offensively and defensively. We've seen over the past few years defensively they were very tough, but they had issues getting the ball in the hole, and you had some injuries along the way that kind of derailed them as well. But that program looks like they're up and going again. That was a huge game this past Monday, Texas Southern and Jackson State, 2 heavyweights. And I was really interested about is they have a couple of guards. When you take a look at Kavion McClain for Texas Southern, it's extremely hard to stay in front of him. You talk about filling the shoes of P.J. Henry. He's done a tremendous job. He's performed over expectations, according to Johnny Jones. But going up against Deshaun Ruffin, McDonald's, former McDonald's All-American, and Kavion McClain won that initial battle with Texas Southern and Jackson State with McClain going for over 20 points in the game. So you take your hats off to Texas Southern. Should be really interesting. As much as I want to penalize Howard for the loss to Morehouse, they're getting it done in conference play. Can't move them just yet.
You can penalize them for the loss to Bowie State then, if you don't want to penalize for the loss to us.
Hey, I left it open for you to take another shot at them.
And the thing about the Morehouse loss is at least Morehouse is in the top part of the SIAC and playing some pretty good basketball. But the Bowie State, which has clipped now 2 Division I HBCUs, got a win over Hampton as well, has struggled in conference play in the CIAA North, as they are at the bottom of the Northern Division. But so is basketball. Styles make fights, I guess you can say. With that being said, top 5. Drew, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's nice to see which schools are in the basketball business, because 4 of your top 5 on the men's side also appear on the women's side. So shout out to those athletic directors for investing in basketball. Now,
and one thing before you finish there, we'll talk a little bit more about this Thursday, but that seems to be a thing. You see that at the mid-major level too, where those programs that are playing good basketball are playing it both on the women's side of things and the men's side of things. So great point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a fascinating trend. We've kind of seen it over the last couple of years, but it's really hitting home this year. Go ahead and finish, Drew.
Yeah. As much as I really want to cut into Howard for losing to a Division II yesterday, let's be real. Howard is now probably 4 of their starting 5 right now. Mm-hmm. One player we know is out for the season. They've got a couple other players battling injuries. So despite the fact that Howard is 3-0, how long will they remain at the top given the attrition that they're going through? Because Coach Blake is a good coach. Let's give him all credit where he's a doggone good coach. Oh, yeah. And with the matchup that they have against Norfolk coming up coming up real soon, that's going to be interesting to see. Texas Southern, do I really need to say anything when it comes to SWAC men's basketball in Texas Southern? I mean, we haven't called it the Texas Invitational for no reason over the last decade or so. Jackson State took their lumps out of conference play. Shout out to Bo Williams for keeping those guys motivated, and when they got into conference play, being able to flip the switch and turn it back on. But right now, dare I say it, is Southern the class of the SWAC this year? Or will Southern and do what they've done the last 3, 4, 5 years over the last couple of coaches and start to fade in February? That's one of the things that I want to keep an eye on, Dr. Cavill. And I'm not even gonna get into the transient property math problem that we talked about last night in our chat group. The MEAC is beating the SWAC, and we've got some Division IIs that have beaten MEAC teams. So the Division IIs as good as the SWAC teams, or better than SWAC teams? Look, when it's all said and done, especially in this portal era, we know there are a lot of good athletes playing ball at the Division II level that can light it up. And the fact that in basketball, if you got 3 good players, you can compete with anybody no matter what level it is. Yeah. This is not football where you got, football, you got to have a quarterback. You got to have a receiver. You got to have a pass rusher. No. Basketball, I need 3 people who can put the ball in the basket and play halfway decent defense, and I got a chance. So we're seeing that in the way some of these teams are made, that all of a sudden pop into it, or teams that don't fall off, like a Jackson State with the transfers, like a Texas Southern, who had for them a down year last year, and able to rebound real quick. All you need to do is add one, maybe two pieces, and you're quickly able to get back into the mix when it comes to basketball.
I like that. It'll be interesting to see as Southern continues on this year credit in terms of what they're doing early. And the big thing is, when you look at it, is they have a win over the top 5 team, actually number 3, Texas Southern Tigers, which is big. They have a win over essentially the number 16 Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. They have some solid wins. Now, one of them was on the road, and one of them was at home. So it'll be interesting to see as they continue during this season, because they're going to inevitably match up with some tough teams. They got Alabama State, that's a top 10 team. They got Alcorn, top 10 team. They got a matchup against Jackson State, top 10 team. So there's some up and down in terms of SWAC. That's really good. Before we get out of this last break, let me give this update, and then I'll let you do your question.
Okay.
Again, want to shout out Liv. She has a different team in the top 5, a couple of different teams. So interesting there. She really sees the strength of the MEAC in a lot of ways, which we just alluded to in the first segment, and then what you just said there, Drew, about the MEAC having the wins decisively over the SWAC in non-conference way, 5-1. But at number 5, she has Morgan State. I have them top 10, but not even in the top 5. Texas Southern, we believe are top 5. We agree on that. She has South Carolina State in the top 5. I have them just outside. I had essentially had South Carolina State receiving votes essentially at number 7. Norfolk State at number 2. We agree on that. And Southern at number 1. So 3 of the 5 we agree upon. Prickly top 2 in terms of the rankings. So interesting just to see what that looks like there. 80 Drew, question you want to ask, and then I think Charles wanted to ask one as well.
I'm gonna do a quick comment and a question. Comment. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Person over at Coppin State, Senior Women's Administrator. We seriously thought we were going to get snowed into Baltimore on yesterday, and I reached out to her, and she had agreed to open up her facility so that we would have somewhere to practice if we got stuck in Baltimore, because we stayed in Baltimore instead of DC on yesterday. So I just want to give her a public shout out and thank her for helping us out, HBCU to HBCU, because they didn't have to do that for us. Now my question, Dr. Cavill, there are certain metrics that, if the season ended today, and we know how that goes, have Southern on the 15 line. Is it true? Should I get excited, or should I look at it with pause? The fact that right now they think Southern may be on the 15 line.
I would have a pause, but I'm glad to see that there's some rankings out there to have it on 15. But in terms of what SWAC did this year in the non-conference, as they play more SWAC teams, I think that ranking is going to go down, which is going to force them into that first 4. Obviously, they played it in a while, so they might have the ability to push them up, even though they're slotted there. So I think it's a pause early on. If they continue to run the table, certainly if they're able to do it the regular season and the tournament, it gives you a huge difference in terms of that 15 ranking. And maybe that's what they're seeing. They're projecting that they're going to win the regular season and the tournament, which could make a lot of sense. Charles, you had a question you wanted to get?
Well, no, I got some breaking news. Probably should have included it into the news and notes to begin, but we can go to break.
Let's do that in the last segment coming out of the break. We'll hold it as a tease, get in this last break, and then we'll break that news to make sure you can go through it thoroughly. We'll be right back after this last break.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Looking for the ultimate cultural experience of 2025? The Zora Outdoor Festival of the Arts is where you need to be. From January 31st to February 2nd, Eatonville, Florida will come alive with incredible live performances from the Levert Experience and the Bar Cave. Immerse yourself in interactive art. Shop from over 80 vendors. Take a journey through history with a new virtual tour app. And enjoy family-friendly STEM activities. Plus, don't miss the unforgettable R&B tribute to the legends, honoring talents such as Whitney Houston, Marvin Gaye, and Luther Vandross. This is more than a festival. It's a celebration of Eatonville's rich cultural heritage. Visit zorafestival.org for tickets.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Sonia from She Say Sports. Make sure to check us out every Friday morning at 9 a.m. on Black College Sports Network, YouTube, and Linktree. And please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Will Cavill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Charles had some breaking news that he wanted to make sure we got out, and we're going to do it this segment.
Yeah, and just like that, I just lost it. But Purdue's volleyball coach, Lindsay, she resigned this afternoon, I believe. That was breaking from HBCU Legends about 2 hours ago. But she has accepted a job at another institution. But I wanted to give kudos to everything that she's done at Purdue as far as the volleyball team over the past 2 seasons.
Yep, leaving the nest, she is alumni of the institution, but she's going to Memphis. Landing that job. So that's fascinating, a great opportunity to see her be able to continue to build on her career. Hate to see her because she was really involved in a lot of things. You could tell the program was certainly in an upward trajectory as they finished in the top third of the conference. But now Prairie View is on the lookout for a volleyball coach. With that being said, I wanted to get in a little bit of some key matchups, if you would, coming out of this week. But before I do that, AD Drew, I saw in the handshake line the gentleman going across the coaches. I thought I seen an envelope that was passed, and I'm not talking about the NIL and cash. We've heard about that in the past, but that's now illegal. So that couldn't have been that. I just wanted to make sure my eyes didn't deceive me. Did I see that correctly? An invitation was presented from Howard to Morehouse, or was that something else that I saw that? Don't answer that.
No. I can't answer that out loud. Yes, we know there is speculation that one of the Atlanta institutions may be going east. But right now, I have
the other one going southwest.
I don't know. All I know is there is talk about one of the Atlanta institutions possibly going east, but nothing concrete has been put out there by either one of these institutions. So when they do put out a public statement, I will make sure that you are the first one to know, Dr. Cavill, and that you get one of the first, if not the first, exclusive interview.
I appreciate it. That'll work for me. What I've also heard, not to say that any teams are leaving the SIAC, but I heard two may be coming into the SIAC. We had heard this earlier in terms of Talladega. That didn't work out. But now I'm hearing about a big brand, a significant brand.
A non-HBCU brand.
No, it's actually, this one is a HBCU brand.
Okay.
That's coming in. And I'll leave that right there until it more momentum and it becomes official. But when I got word of this, I was like, this would be a significant move, whether it's both of them or one of them. Both would be big news in terms of the SIAC. Continue to grow, particularly with significant marketplaces.
I was going to say, I think one of the big things that kind of went under the radar, you pointed it out last night in our chat group, that something that I had learned from the NCAA meetings is now the fact that Division II institutions, conference champions, now get a AQ, automatic qualifier, to all of the to the football playoffs, and that is huge. Prior, you had to get in via earned access, and what earned access meant was not only did you have to win your conference, you had to finish in the top 9. So I remember distinctly, I believe it was 2018 or 2019. Albany State Miles. Albany State was the top seed going into the championship game, and Albany State wins. They're in. Miles upsets Albany State, one of Reginald Ruffin's conference championships, and the SIAC was left out of the playoffs. So this eliminates that. So that was one piece of huge legislation on my level that came out of last week's meetings with the NC2A. And also, last comment I want to make, Dr. Gaville, isn't it refreshing to see Eddie George as being considered by the Chicago Bears, and the fact that Tennessee State put out a statement saying that they support Eddie George should he decide to go to take the NFL route. And it's so refreshing to see that we, especially your employer, is not holding you back, is not cutting you down for trying to advance yourself and do what's best for your family and your situation. Whereas we as fans, we get, it's a stepping stone job. They only gonna be here for 3 years, and we get mad and we talk about them like they'd broken our house and stole something from them.
Great points. And it sounds like Chicago is going to name the Detroit offensive coordinator, but the fact that he got an interview on Sunday, I think, was significant.
Yes.
And the second part, like you said, that Tennessee State put out a statement supporting the opportunity for Eddie George. I think, as you said, is significant and a great way to go about it. So a lot of good news. I want to get back into your earned access. What do you think that means in terms of the CIAA and SIAC, how that protects and is more similar to what you have at the FCS level with the automatic bid, and now even the college football playoffs, where you got automatic teams that are in, at least 4 of the top 5 conferences get in, and 4 of them get the buys. Difference on the FCS level, those teams, top 4, they get the buys. You don't have the buys. Well, you do have the buys, in terms of D2, so you still have that. Now you're guaranteed to get in. But what I thought was interesting that is different than the other one is the fact that the conference can create the way they want to designate who get the buys. So your first place team, championship team, doesn't necessarily have to be the one that gets the automatic entry. You can designate that in terms of whatever your formula is, which means there's other options for the CIAA and SIAC to do something with their champions and still have a representative in the playoffs, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Also, what I think might be interesting with this is, does this pave the way for a possible consolation game between the number 3 person in the CIAA and the number 3 person in the SIAC? Although that becomes tougher now logistically, because the CIAA moves to Super Region 1 while the SIAC stays in Super Region 2. So the points as far as the formula goes when they evaluate those teams will not mean as much as when they were both in Super Region 2. So that may have killed the dreams that we had of seeing a potential consolation game, which very realistically could be meant to be in one way or another for the winner of that game, the 2 third-place teams out of those particular conferences. The championship games at these 2 conferences, I don't think is going away because the conferences are too large for football. You know, if this was a 7-8 team conference, you could get away with without having a championship game, even down to a 10 team conference, because you're going to get a pretty fair representation of everybody playing everybody else. But with these conferences, 12, 13, 14 teams, you know, the conference championship game is going to remain. And the CIAA, the PSAC, and the SIAC are the only 3 conferences on the Division II level that actually play a championship game. But I love the PSAC's formula is where that week 11, they pull the 2 teams that are the top 2, play each other, and then they reshuffle the rest of the teams so that everybody has a week 11 game instead of like the SIAC and the CIAA where teams are off that last week of the season, which we have seen the last few years has cost both conferences an opportunity to sneak a second or a third team into the playoffs. I'm off my soapbox now.
Good information. I think that's important to put out there as big news, particularly those that follow the mid-major level and HBCU fans in general. With that being said, let's get into a couple of these matchups before we call it a show. We have Prairie View at Alabama State, FAMU at Alcorn State, Bethune-Cookman at Jackson State, Texas Southern at Alabama A&M, Grambling at Valley, and Southern at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Key matchups in the SWAC. In terms of the MEAC, you have key matchups starting on Saturday with Howard at Norfolk State, South Carolina State at North Carolina Central, Delaware State at Maryland Eastern Shore, Coppin State at Morgan. Going with you, Charles, what's on your mind in terms of a couple of key matchups, whether you want to go with the men, women, or both, one from each?
Both. Taking a look at Norfolk State and Howard. I think that one jumps out for me. Intriguing, though, is Bethune-Cookman and Jackson State. Bethune-Cookman at Jackson State this weekend in terms of looking at the men's game. Bethune-Cookman just are receiving votes in this week's poll. Jackson State sitting in the poll there. So that was intriguing. Actually, I will be doing color on that game this weekend for Jackson State and Bethune-Cookman on the SWAC.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Continue to do the good work as you are providing this color for these HBCU basketball games in the SWAC. Nice deal. AD Drew, for those matchups, what has you excited?
How about the one that's quietly sticking under the radar on the men's side? How about Central and South Carolina State? On the men's side, you know, Central, the traditional power in the MEAC, and South Carolina State, for lack of a better word, is the newcomer in the MEAC. And on the women's side, how about Coppin and Morgan? The Battle of Baltimore is a matchup that I definitely want to keep my eye on the women's side. Both teams come in 2-2 in this particular matchup, so they'll be playing for Baltimore bragging rights, and when they see each other in the 7-Eleven in Baltimore, see who's gonna have to buy who a drink. Gonna have to buy them a big goal.
Last thing before we call it a show, great information from both of you all. I wanted to acknowledge the independents. You have Hampton at William and Mary, North Carolina A&T on Townsend. So both of those teams are on the road in terms of independent. They said there will be no independent show tomorrow or next Wednesday. So just wanted to give a little more update than usual. You have UT Martin at Tennessee State coming up on Tuesday of this week. Actually, coming up at 7:30 tonight. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. I have one bit of sad news that I just got addressed. A dear friend of mine that worked with Chris and I, Chris Gardner, that does some engineering production work still with the show behind the scene. Jerry Woodley, Fifth Ward Wildcat, also named, and we did our podcast, has passed away. Just wanted to give my deepest condolences. He was always a warm individual and did a lot as I was beginning my career transitioning. He was part of the jobs. We had great trips when I decided to go with Chris and Woodley to the women's Final Four. So first Final Four that I had opportunity to do at that level was on the women's side, and part of that was due to Jerry Woodley and certainly Chris, and then later on the men's side. So wanted to make sure as Woodley joins the ancestor that I certainly gave remembrance of him in terms of what he does. I certainly did a lot of work to showcase HBCU. So it's getting that part of life for us that continue to go through it. So make sure you cherish those around you, whether they're family or friends. Certainly is important to do that. With that being said, we'll have the moment of silence as we're going out, but because of time, I want to get into this exit. Thank you for listening inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, come from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Again, I want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop every Tuesday. We'll be back on Thursday, weather permitting. That's at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. Look forward to Thursday to continue to give you some updates. Before we close, Charles, did you want to say a word on behalf of Woodley? As I know that's tough news to hear as well.
Yeah, very tough news. Jerry, always a presence in the Texas Southern post games, whether you're talking football or basketball. But like you say, always a warm presence. I also have a bit of a sad news. My best friend, his father passed this past Sunday. So definitely want to send condolences to my boy Chris Cockrell, who's actually nephew of Medgar Evers. So that family as a whole wanted to send shout outs to them. So
certainly. That will do a moment. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Facebook and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Facebook and YouTube. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
80?
Lecture.
Dismiss.
Have a light.